We're sitting around the fire. Bill's getting some wood burnt to make some coals for his biscuits. There's that Dutch oven. He's just gonna do some talking.
Well, I gotta let the fire burn down to get some coals for the biscuits and let the biscuits rise a little bit. But we were over into Coyote Canyon where we go once in a while with the dogs just walking or on horseback. It's a big area. It's all open country and foothills and canyons, a little bit of water. But anyway, it made me remember, I guess it made me remember, there's a story about that canyon way back. There's a book, actually, a little bit about it, but the book is more in the western part of the state or in the central part of the state. Range of mountains over here across the desert from us, but there was in 1939, there was a fella was on a deer hunt with some people, and he went up on got off to himself, and he went up on this little old mountain, a hill you might say, but it's called a mountain, and he was resting under a ledge in some shade, and he happened to look, and there was an opening, a crevice or a cave going down into the top of the mountain. So he crawled down in it, and he found an old ladder, an ancient ladder going down, and supposedly the story is that he found a bunch of gold bars and armor and jewelry and just a lost treasure. There's a book about it in the library or a bookstore you can get called 100 Tons of Gold, and I've probably talked about it before. But he ended up getting killed over it. Him and somebody went together to develop the claim on it, and they got some out of it, but it was hard to get in there, and he tried to dynamite that shaft, and he messed it up. So he went into partnership with a mining engineer, supposedly what the story is, to figure out a way in. And an interesting side note to that mountain, there's always been a story, ancient story, I don't know when it started, but about Cibola, or the 7 cities of gold, that when the Spaniards came into the Americas, the Indians told them about there was gold farther north, and it might have been just a story just to get them to leave and to go north. But the actual, what I've seen and what this book details, what I've read, the actual phrase was 7 caverns of gold. What I've seen now, that's my opinion. Well, that particular little mountain, it had an entrance at the top, and it had 2 on the south side, 2 on the north side, and 1 on the east side, and 1 on the west side. That's 7 entrances. And some people think that's where that 7 cities of gold, or 7 caverns of gold came from. But anyway, he ended up getting killed over it. He got in a dispute with his partner, and his partner killed him in his yard right by his, he was supposedly going for a gun in his truck, and the other guy shot him dead. This is back in the 39 or 40, before World War II. And his wife eventually filed a claim with the state of New Mexico to get in there and go after it. Well, the Army put her out eventually. And there's an ongoing story about it in the present day. Her descendants got access to it through Freedom of Information Acts and petitions to the government to go in there and try to find evidence. And they had found evidence of soldiers being in there, lucky strike packages from K-rations.
And Lucky Strike packages is cigarettes.
Yeah, that's cigarettes that the government used to put in K-rations.
Give to the soldiers.
Usually, I think it was 2 packs. But when the descendants, it was the woman's grandson, I believe, in our time, went in there with scientific equipment and vacuums and trying to access the mountain, down into the mountain. Well, I don't think they ever found anything valuable, but they did find evidence of the soldiers being in there. But after it kind of, before
No, quit.
that, back in the 40s, I believe,
No.
another fella got in there after the Army run her off. And the story is that he would sneak in there from over here in this Tularosa area, and he rode an old Indian motorcycle. And they make them nowadays. They've come back out with that brand, but it was a brand that when there was only Harley and Indian motorcycles. I think Indian was maybe first, I don't know, but they were back in the time when Harley first started, Harley Davidson. But he would ride through this desert on old roads and trails, and he found it. And this was before the Army started getting in there, or supposedly the Army started getting in there. And the story is that he was carrying a little bit at a time, these gold bars out of there. The woman that had a claim to it, she had pictures of swords that they found in there, Spanish swords, and I believe a crown with jewels on it. Different things that had been stashed in there over the years, probably by Indian raids or whatever, bandit raids, Indian raids. Getting back to this guy that was from over here, the story is that he was transporting it across here and going into Coyote Canyon and hiding it. And there was a fellow that was helping him stash it back in there. And the story is that they got into a dispute back in modern times. This is pretty much in our times. They got in a dispute about it back in there somewhere, and the other partner killed him. I talked to a cop that went back in there. He was a young cop, way younger than me, probably 25 years ago. And he had went in there a few years before when the murder happened. And I think they had him just stand by the scene until the investigators got in there. As far as I know, the guy that killed him, they prosecuted him, and I think he went to prison. I don't know if he ever got out or what's become of him, but that's basically the story.
And people think that gold is still in there.
Yeah, some of it, I don't know how, didn't say how much he got, but he was carrying it out on that old motorcycle in his saddlebags. And the original person that found it in 1939, he got some out because he had hired people to help him, and he stashed it at different places out in the desert around old windmills, and so the story goes. And most of that's never been found. But in the 60s, I believe it was, the Army done a full-blown investigation, and there's pictures where they went in with a bulldozer and just about obliterated that mountain, trying to get into it. And there's people that has come forward that were in the military or worked for the government have acknowledged that they got it. This was in the time of Lyndon Johnson when he was president. But that's a story about that concerns around here. People still think that there might be that gold has not been uncovered over there. We don't look for it. It's not why we go over there. But we were going over before we ever heard the story. It's an interesting story, but both people that had contact with it got killed over it.
That's a big area, and
Yeah,
you could hide anything over there.
Yeah, it's probably 20,000 acres of public land or open land over there. And a lot of it, we go out there on horseback, we go places where they can't get. We even get out of where a lot of four-wheelers don't go. Four-wheelers can go a lot of places, but we have been places where they don't go. And there's a lot of little old arroyos, there's a lot of cliffs, bluffs with crevices in them. I don't know of any caves back in there. Not particular there, but we have found stuff hidden. Old mining tools is what we've found on our horseback rides back in the hills, but not in that area. There is a lot of old mining claims back in there still yet. They're probably all expired. I don't think anybody's doing any mining back in there. It's cattle country now. There's not much grass, but there is some cattle back in there, and hunters go back in there. There's some deer in there, but not very many.
And that wild goat?
Yeah, well, there's
or goats?
Angora sheep, they call them. It looks like a big old goat. They're kind of a yellowish red. We jumped one on horseback years ago. Just one. It was a ram. They're pretty good size. They probably weighed about 120, 30 pounds maybe.
Well, he could run like a
They
racehorse.
run. And there is mountain lions back in there. People go back in the main part of it on four-wheelers a lot and four-wheeling with four-wheel drive vehicles. But the majority of it is hard to access. People see a spot back in there and they think they can go straight to it. Hey, Belle, no. Belle's telling off. We rode to a spot a long time ago, a fellow that we know that grew up in this area. We mostly go to stuff like that for pictures, take pictures of it, just curious. But he told us of an old homestead way up on the side of a mountain on a mesa type setting. So we put one day out to, it's been way back, to ride to it. And we were all day getting out there and back, and we probably didn't go 10 miles altogether, I'd imagine.
Yeah, had to cross,
But
go
just
around
up
all the
and down,
ditches.
in and out of arroyos, in and out of canyons, up steep grades. And we made it. We got up on top of it. We never did see any evidence of any old. We were about wore out the time we got there.
Yeah, that was a lot of work
And
getting
the
over
horses
there.
were tired because it was just real rough going. I know a fellow that used to live south of here, and he was from way back east when he moved here, and he had a couple of horses. But he was going to ride north from where he lived in a little community south of here, and he was going to ride north to a friend's house along the foothills. And people not knowing and not used to this territory or this kind of terrain think you can just make a straight line. You usually can't do it. But he was, I don't think he went 3 or 4 miles from that little community to this guy's house, and he was a half a day doing it. And you get out away from the foothills, and it's a little bit better because coming out of the foothills, that's when the water really rushes and it makes those arroyos deep. But he learned a lesson about riding straight through. And that's the way that is over there, over in that Coyote Canyon area, and it's a large area, and a lot of it is inaccessible unless you're really determined. And, but that's the story of Coyote Canyon and what happened over there. But that book, it doesn't tell much about him. That book that said that 100 tons of gold, but it tells the backstory about the cavern and the mountain and the guy that originally found it. And a lot of big time people got involved in the story in the 60s. I think there was a lawyer by the name of F. Lee Bailey was pulled into it for, I think a few people hired him to try to get a legal claim to it. I don't know for sure. I don't remember. It's been 20, almost 30 years since I read the book. But it's a good book. It's if you're interested in that kind of stuff, and it tells a lot about the terrain and what it's like over there. And it's a real remote area. Now it's completely locked out, and they patrol it. What I'm told.
The government patrols it.
Yeah, the Army patrols it, I believe, or the security. I don't know which. They used to have in that area what they called range riders. They were civilian workers that I think a lot of them rode horseback in patrolled areas, but I think they do it with jeeps now. They've got roads going to it. There is a road going to it from the west, but it's got a locked gate before you can get anywhere close to it, I believe. I've never been over there right at that point. But there's old tales about that particular mountain, Spanish tales about people that might have originally hid the gold, and that book goes into detail about a lot of it if anybody's interested. But that's the story, and I'm going to have to get my coals ready and start.
You're looks like you got some coals down there.
Yeah, the biscuits have rose a little bit, so I'm going to.
Yeah, Bill is. Check the biscuits. Oh yeah, that looks good. I can smell them. It's time to eat. Biscuits and gravy. Thanks for watching from Out West Homestead. Bye.
I'm going to cover that up.